Hi, and welcome to Launch Over 40 with Yolanda Kennedy. Today, our guest is Leah Gray. Leah Gray provides electronic payment recommendations and solutions for small businesses. She assists the small business owner in maximizing profit and increasing cash flow. She also provides education and implementation of the PCI program, which is of great importance in protecting consumer financial information and avoiding data breach. Hi, Leah, and I'm really excited to have you here today. So today we're going to talk about more security and credit cards. And, you know, with everything that happened with Target just over this holiday, I'm sure a lot of people are interested in how to protect their business.
Yes, it did increase the exposure. People are more aware now that it is a legitimate risk, and but they're not clear on what they need to do to take care of protecting their business.
So what are some steps that we can do?
Well, first of all, the processor, many business owners are not aware that they can work directly with the processor. You don't have to work through a reseller, so you can work directly with the processor, which is going to allow you to have conversations directly with them about PCI compliance and how that affects your business and what your exposure actually is. So they should be talking with whoever is doing the processing for them. That company should have a PCI compliance department that will educate their merchants about the 12 steps to PCI compliance and help them implement that program.
So what is PCI and what is, I mean, I know that you know, but, let's break it down for our listeners exactly what is PCI.
Okay, PCI is shortened for PCI DSS, which stands for Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. They're guidelines that were required by the U.S. government to be established in 2009 by MasterCard, Visa, Discover, and American Express to increase merchant awareness about the receipt, storage, and transmission of their customers' financial data when they're using their credit cards at their establishments. Those guidelines are now requirements for any merchant that takes any form of electronic payment, and the deadline to become PCI compliant was actually December 31st of 2012.
So let's say somebody, now, if you're online and you accept payments to some of these third-party providers like PayPal and things like that, is that a responsibility for you as a business owner or PayPal? Because you technically don't get their credit card information.
Well, PayPal will be PCI compliant, or your third-party provider, but the guidelines are incumbent on the actual merchant. Any merchant that takes any form of electronic payment, whether it's a desktop terminal, a website payment, a mobile payment, or a virtual terminal, is required to be PCI compliant for their company. If their company, even though you may not actually handle the card information, because you are accepting payment from the consumer, your company needs to be PCI compliant.
So what steps should someone take to look into this information and how to get PCI compliant? Data breach has become a huge cybercrime issue. So, first of all, there has to be awareness of actually what the risk is, and there is a legitimate risk. There are 12 steps to become PCI compliant. That is available. It's public information. It's available through the PCI Security Council website online, and so you can implement it yourself. It's a quite expensive amount of work. So I would encourage you to enable the assistance or engage the assistance of your processor to do it. So what happens is there are 12 steps required, and being knowledgeable about that will help you prevent data breach. And then once you have implemented the PCI compliance, if you ever do have a data breach, in many cases your processor will have funds available for you to use towards data breach expenses. Typical in the industry is up to $30,000, but it's important that you read the contract to be sure that includes chargeback fees, attorney's fees, and the forensic audit, which lasts between 4 to 8 weeks. And that's during the forensic audit, you cannot take any form of electronic payment. High indemnity waiver would be up to $100,000 of indemnification funds. So it's dependent on the processor that you're using, but also the implementation of the PCI compliance plan. If it's done through your processor, it's going to be a lot easier for you. There's a 36-page quick start guide online if you want to do it yourself, but I would encourage you to use someone who can help you with the technical questions. How you're going to do that is
Your processor will outline the 12 steps, and the 12 steps include you're going to need to have an annual report on compliance. You're going to have to install and maintain a firewall configuration to protect data. Step 2 is do not use vendor-supplied defaults for system passwords and other security parameters. Step 3 is protect stored data. It has to be under lock and key and only accessible by those people that are authorized to do so. Step 4 is encrypt transmission of cardholder data and sensitive information across public networks. And that's important because there's equipment now available to the merchant that encrypts the data as soon as the card is swiped, and that's an important point. That prevents data breach or dramatically reduces the risk of data breach by hackers. The fifth step is use and regularly update antivirus software. The sixth step is develop and maintain a secure systems and specifications program. Step 7 is restrict access to data by business need to know. So employees that do not need to process financial transactions should not have access to that data. Step 8 is assign a unique ID to each person with computer access, and you designate which computers they have access to. Step 9 is restrict physical access to cardholder data. So, again, only people that have to process that information should have access. Step 10 is to track and monitor all access to network resources and cardholder data. And step 11 is regularly test security systems and processes. The final step, the 12th step, is maintain a policy that addresses information security. And it's been my experience in the industry that many businesses do not, especially your small business owner, do not have a department that could produce a security policy manual like that. And that's the 12th and final step to PCI compliance. And if you do not have that written documented security policy on the premises, and you have not had your employees that handle financial data sign off on that policy, you may not be PCI compliant. So that's an important piece that is often not followed through on.
Now, Leah, you mentioned quite a few things that make sense if I had a small store. But if you're online and accepting payments, like, say, through a third party with PayPal, one, you don't have a processor, and two, you don't see the card information. So how would someone online go about being, PCI compliant? Like, what steps would they have to take?
You do have a processor. Whoever you are utilizing to process those payments should be assisting you with your PCI compliance.
So if I'm connected to PayPal, you saying PayPal should be able to help assist me with being PCI compliant?
Absolutely. They are using a processor. That processor should be assisting you. The fines and fees imposed by the processing industry, I believe, create an ethical responsibility for people in my industry to educate and help the merchant implement the PCI compliance so that they do not, so they do avoid the risk of data breach and all of the fines and fees associated with that. So if you're using any online service, Authorize.net, PayPal, whoever it is you're using, those companies should assist you in becoming PCI compliant. You're limiting their exposure to risk when you become PCI compliant.
That's interesting because I really have not seen anything about PCI compliant on PayPal's website or anything. And I'm not picking particularly on PayPal. It's just that that's one of the services I'm used to using.
Well, they are PCI compliant, so they don't have to tell you we are PCI compliant. I mean, they do have to tell you that. But they don't, when you sign your user agreement with PayPal, you will read in that user agreement that it advises you to become PCI compliant.
Gotcha. Okay.
Read the fine print. Yeah.
I'll go back to those 80 pages.
Yeah. And if they're doing the processing for you, it is in their interest for you to be PCI compliant as well.
That is very interesting, especially because, like I said, it's something that, because you and I spoke a couple weeks ago, and that's basically when I invited you to come on the show because it was very interesting about the online services and PCI compliant. because in my mind, I'm not accepting any credit card payments. I never technically have access to it, so you think you're protecting yourself. And I know a lot of small businesses would go through services like Authorize.net, PayPal, because of that. They feel like that's the way of protecting them from any security breaches.
But you're saying you don't have access to it, but you actually do, because when you receive funds in your bank account from that customer, you have had access to their cardholder data. You may not be able to go get the full cardholder information. Your reports are going to show the last 4 digits. That should be, protected cardholder data.
Right.
However, you legally are accepting payment from that merchant. So you as the merchant, from that customer. So you as the merchant are required to be PCI compliant. And if you go on to the PCI Security Council website, you will see that it is the merchants at the merchant level, not at the processor level. All of the processors will be PCI compliant. They're required to be PCI compliant long before the merchants. So,
well, that's really interesting to know. So what other information could you give us about this PCI compliant, and, how long does the process take? Is it costly? What should we expect?
Well, my husband and I had owned a business since 1991. It's a retail service establishment. We do sewing machine, vacuum cleaner sales and service. And I had worked in the financial arena several years back with small business owners, and then doing some marketing for small business owners. So if this first came to my attention as a business owner, WorldPay was the first company that I talked with that said, here you need to be PCI compliant. Here are the steps to do that. And so I did some research because I wanted to make sure. I wasn't sure what the actual risk was to my business. And when I did the research, it was frightening, actually, because I found that, because of the number of transactions we processed, and because data breach occurs when hackers electronically access the information from the terminal. And that's what happened with Target. They had electronically accessed the information from their POS system, their point-of-sale system, day after day after day. And then when they get enough data, then they turn around and resell it worldwide. When you realize that the access is electronically through your terminal, then you understand that each transaction, you're not only liable for the fraudulent amount of the stolen card, but you also have a chargeback fee of $20. You have legal fees. The forensic audit takes between 4 and 8 weeks. You cannot take any form of electronic payment while that is happening. It costs between $5,000 and $10,000. So a regular business owner can rack up $35,000 to $50,000 in fines, fees, and chargeback expense in a matter of weeks. That is a significant. If it doesn't put somebody out of business, it won't hurt them for a long time. That's a significant consideration. Plus, then you're downgraded to a level 1 from a level 4. So you're going to have an annual audit every year. It's going to be bad exposure for your business because people are not going to be comfortable using their cards at your business for transactions. And in my case, our business, when we purchased it, was in 91 was 80% cash, 20% credit cards. At this point in time, we're 90% credit cards, 10% cash, if that, because people want to use their cards for the points that they build for their family vacations and things that are of personal nature to them. So credit card usage is on the rise every year. So it's critically important for people to understand that there is exposure to data breach. The U.S. is a target right now because until April of 2015, we're all using cards with a magnetic strip on the back. In April 2015, merchants and consumers will be required to use the EMV or WorldPay MasterCard Visa chip, microchip credit cards, and the equipment that processes those credit cards. Until then, the U.S. is a target because our data, again, is stored on the terminals until it's transmitted at the end of the day when it's encrypted. So first of all, if you can use equipment that is end-to-end encrypted, which means as soon as the card is swiped, the data is scrambled or encrypted immediately, if you can do that in your business, you are dramatically reducing the risk of data breach. And secondly, if you become PCI compliant, if you have a data breach, you will then have some funds to deal with this kind of it's a huge financial impact, not to mention the public or community PR impact that a data breach would have. So how you go about doing that is contacting your processor, who will give you the steps or the guidelines. You can go to PCI DSS Council online.